recent joiners, right? But it's easy for a lot of fans, I think, to follow this team. There's definitely a lot of attention put on them. Are we going to see Anna and Thompson again make it back? Are we going to see Whitemon, Zephyr, and Cuckoo have success with this, change up in the roster? And overall, they've been playing pretty damn good and their own style. That's what I enjoy about them, is that they have clearly an identity with how they play. They find their strengths and they play into it a lot, which is also true for NAVI. Like, none of these teams are really just copying whatever wave here and going as far as it can in towards the finals. And going into the draft already, I want to talk a little bit about T1 and NAVI, because there's a big difference that I noticed when I did my studies for these two teams. Did you know that T1 have picked Undying every single time it's been available to them? It's been contested 100% in the games that they played so far, and NAVI have not picked or banned Undying a single time throughout the entire Last Chance qualifier. So no surprise here to see T1 taking the Undying when presented with it. NAVI must have expected this, because this is something that stands out like a sore thumb here, going into the draft.
Yeah, I'm very curious if NAVI just has an idea of, we know how to play around this hero, it's not a problem. Obviously, the big ones that they were concerned about, Marcy has been banned and picked, I think, in almost every single game that I've seen so far. And of course, Thompson's Primal Beast, and Primal Beast in general, just being able to have that flexibility and move them throughout a draft just gives you too much freedom. So, do you see those left out of the draft here? They'd be not picked up, but the Undying being open. And the Gyrocopter is kind of interesting to me too, because I haven't seen much of this hero in the games that we've been covering.
No, Gyro hasn't really been played that much, but it doesn't surprise me that it's T1 they're going to bring it out. It's a very active hero. He can look for fights. When we were watching T1 play yesterday, they were really turning up the pace in game 2 against Wildcard, and they played some active style carry as well, and are getting involved in a ton of kills. Gyrocopter, if you run him as a carry, can be that active hero joining in a lot of fights and not just sit back and farm. He also pairs up really well against Enigma, so the reason they picked this is probably already reaction. You see Enigma on NAVI, probably expected, because they've been prioritizing Enigma really high in their draft throughout all their games. So T1 seemed prepared, NAVI seemed prepared. Both have their own ideas how they want to deal with the opponents here.
Yeah, I was curious because, again, we haven't seen a lot of Gyrocopter, and we've seen so many teams recently that like to be very active, that are trying to get that momentum come out of the laning stage, just ready to fight, ready to brawl. The Polaris game comes to mind, especially with the way that they just absolutely obliterated their opponents. I think it was 23 minutes in a 20-minute game, but they were opting for different heroes for that. So it makes sense that, like you mentioned, having the flat cannons kind of being the Eidolons, and then just also being very mobile and active in the early game. But flip side of that too, you've got that Tusk over on the side of NAVI, which means that you have to be very conscious about, what are you putting in that mid lane, making sure that it's not easily gankable, or that you're constantly, calling out missing and thinking, okay, if we don't see him on the map right now, he's got to be moving towards our mid laner, we have to protect.
Yeah, when I see the draft of NAVI here, thinking about Enigma and Tusk, I'm already thinking that Spirit heroes could be good. NAVI also banning out the Puck could be an annoying hero for them, has great cancellation for the Black Hole, and also has that mobility. I think in general, T1, they could look towards something like an Ember, a Void Spirit, or something down that line, as NAVI are going to go with a Tusk and Dawnbreaker as well. Okay. Considering they already have the Enigma, this is quite likely going to be a core Dawnbreaker here, getting some big farm.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're seeing very different picks from the games that we covered the other day, so it is very nice to be able to follow NAVI. And I'm curious too, with the idea, they are currently sitting at the top of Group A. Do you think they're feeling that pressure right now, that they need to continue just absolutely dominating, or
I think
that they're just
maybe the opposite? Yeah, I think maybe they're just feeling confident since they are, doing so well, playing really strong Dota. I wish that we could have followed more of their games individually, but when I looked at it, it seemed like they have been overall performing really well in pretty much all their matchups. And they probably feel confident going against T1, but T1, they are a team that have very highest level. They haven't really been steady at it here in Last Chance qualifiers, but we've seen it, glimpses of it here and there. So NAVI, they can definitely not sleep on this game, because this is an important best of 3 that they're going into.
Absolutely, and we do have the pickup of the Winter Wyvern. This is a hero I really enjoy, especially when you have something like an Enigma. Once Enigma picks up that BKB, you usually have to be quite careful, but when you have something like a Winter Wyvern, it allows allows you to have that Winter's Curse that pierces magic immunity and will be able to cancel it. But positioning is going to be super key for both of these heroes. Actually just picked up on T1. The Wyvern has to be in the right position in case the Black Hole comes in. And then of course your Earthshaker, obviously, you know, do you want to use him as your initiator or your counter initiator? And it feels probably like he's going to be the main initiator at this point.
Yeah, quite likely. You might start something with just Gyrocopter going in with rocketing someone and then having Shaker following right behind it, but most likely Shaker's going to be looking to get the big slam initiation and Wyvern is covering for the Black Hole coming in. I like the draft that we see from T1. We already have something interesting too, that we're going to have a core, either Undying, Wyvern, or Shaker, right? One of them has to be core, and when it's T1, they're so flexible they can probably put anything here. My suspicion is that even this Winter Wyvern could be a core hero in this game.
I mean, that's the fun of having Thompson on your team. You're never quite sure what's going into that mid lane. But yes, like you said, you know, a lot of kind of lane domination going on. I like the idea though with this Dawnbreaker over on the side of Navi. The idea of being able to have someone, you know, doing their thing in the jungle also gives you a really strong lane too, right? But you have this counter initiation if they're starting to hunt, if they're looking for Drow's off, you know, farming some stacks or whatever, you can immediately have that presence come out from your team and you can try to, you know, either protect the Drow or you can take a fight depending on how closely everyone else is playing around you. And this does look like a very fast playing draft coming out from both teams, but I'll be curious to see, you know, how they utilize this Dawnbreaker right now.
Yeah, Dawnbreaker is a great hero in the sense that you can always split push and be ready to join the fight, so you can have an easier time getting the lanes to good positions, and that allows you to make more moves if the creeps are pushed back far towards the enemy, opens up the map a little bit more for you to make small rotations that are less telegraphed. So it's a nice thing about having her. She acts sort of similar to a Tyrion in many ways, just being able to join the fight. But I think for now, I think T1 are probably a little bit more comfortable with what they have going, since both Enigma and Dawnbreaker, their ultimates are sort of clustering by nature, right? Enigma wants there to be a cluster team fight, and Dawnbreaker has to jump onto an ally when she jumps in. So Winter Wyvern should have a pretty good game here is what I'm feeling. And Drow Ranger can really shred her own teammates if she is ever close to someone and gets Winter's Cursed.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this is a game of positioning coming out from both of the teams. Again, having the Dawnbreaker though with the global ulti makes it a little bit easier for them to execute the draft over on the side of Navi, but when you look at what T1's got, even if, you know, you go into the initiation, you get counter-initiated on, you still have to be incredibly careful. And also, you know, the fact that Wyvern can just cancel out if this Dawnbreaker's trying to ult out. And I think that's something that you can't forget here, is that you do have a way of kind of dealing with that global presence if you're not necessarily close to the team, which ideally as Winter Wyvern though, you're going to be trailing around with your core and not off on your own. But you do have that option if she tries to leave.
Yeah, for sure. I like the ban that Navi did, their last ban, the Mars. I think it can be quite troublesome for a hero like Drow who wants to sit back and attack. As we see a Snapfire picked up here, even more damage. Wow, T1's lineup is so fight heavy. It's incredibly fight intensive. You like the hardest farmer you have is Gyrocopter, who's arguably one of the most active type carry heroes in Dota as well. If you wanna join fights, you certainly can. Whereas Navi look like they want to play slower. They have Enigma, they have a big cooldown they need to play around, and that can be problematic if T1 have all these heroes that want to just rush at you. And Drow Ranger, she struggles a bit if the enemy get close to her, and there are so many things that will just run at her, I think, in these team fights.
Yeah, this is a BKB game if ever I've seen one for the side of Navi, when you add in those Snapfire Kisses, the Echo Slam, and all the other fun stuff coming out from their draft. I do like the idea of this Gyro. You mentioned how active it's going to be able to be, but even before we watched, you know, T1 the other day, and we saw the Morphling. Morphling usually wants to kind of just do his own thing, let his team make the space, but we saw a very active Morphling coming out. So I would not be surprised to see this draft with very, you know, low cooldowns just running at the side of Navi. So I'm very curious. Again, they do have the Dawnbreaker. Dawnbreaker's going to be able to mitigate some of that damage in the sense of just being able to jump in with a heal, but I'm not sure what this final pickup's gonna be. We're gonna find out right now. Okay, so it is the Ember. We talked about the Spirits going to that mid lane, and that's gonna provide a little bit more pseudo-global presence as well, being able to just remnant about. But I don't know. What are you thinking about this draft here, Waga?
Well, no one on Ember Spirit has a lot of work cut out for him, I think. Yeah, I was expecting more the Spirit to perhaps come out for T1 there earlier against the Enigma, but I think maybe Ember is exactly what they needed, a strong hero that can fight on low cooldowns, because they already made themselves quite dependent on these cooldowns with Black Hole and Dawn ulti. But there will be a lot to fight for Ember. There are also good disables in this game. There's the Fissure, the Snapfire